Tell says some details, of course, will remain secret to protect the investigation. But he did note that some theories have already been debunked.
Look closely at this image. Do you see that sort of bubble at the back of his neck? Is there any proof of a new entry wound?
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. So are we dealing with a new trajectory here? Is there proof of a new entry wound? Wherever you are, put up your hand right now if you think that is the case. And if your hand is up, please type "my hand is up" in the comments. I'll give you a moment to do that. All right. During times, we want these words on screen, during times of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. Have you ever heard those words? Ironically, even the attribution of that quote to George Orwell, although it seems right, although it feels right, it's a deceit, because we don't actually know who said that, which in a way proves the original point. Reality and the truth gets lost in this cacophony of deception, and there seems to be a race underway, a race to the bottom, not to the top to get to the truth, to the light, a race to the bottom of the sewer. Meanwhile, reality and the truth gets lost. People are led astray. The mindless mob become more mindless by the day. This image, which shows Charlie Kirk microseconds after he was shot, clearly shows zero injury to his head. That's it. You don't need any more explanation. No ifs, buts, or maybes. But well done to the 6 million of you and counting who were bamboozled by this BS. And I see RDB is now leading with this image, which I put on my video yesterday. In fact, he's even using it as the cover for his video.
We are tonight's entertainment.
He's leading with this image, and to his credit, in the first few seconds of his latest analysis, he is, at least I think he is, sort of hedging back his arguments, which he says aren't even his arguments, it's just a theory. I'm sort of scratching my head about that because his previous video seemed quite definitive. New proof in all caps, large white letters with an exclamation mark, seems pretty definitive to say this is a fact. You can't say new proof and then say afterwards, well, it might not really be proof. Sorry about that. Now, I can't speak to the rest of whatever it is he's saying because I haven't watched it. I do have a feeling in a general sense he is going to still be pushing his not his argument, which is why I've got to respond with 4 more evidence markers. I said I would, and let me be clear, this is my theory, this is my argument, and I stand by it. Let me also say, what I have a problem with is the distortion to this image. First of all, let's just ask a very neutral question. Has this image been distorted, changed, tampered with in any way? Well, why would you want to do that? Am I reading it wrong, or does it imply that there is an injury to the side of his head? Because what I see is kind of a flesh-colored line going along that side, right? And so why is there a flesh-colored line implying something is there that isn't there, interfering with what is actually seen at the critical moment? And you know, the opposite of inference is interference. And I think we want to put those words on screen. Funnily enough, someone criticized me saying, you're not even pronouncing it right. It's inference. Really, so do we also say interference? Interpretation. Anyway, to each his own, I guess.
We are tonight's entertainment.
Eagle-eyed internet sleuths have questioned why a departing aircraft close to the university turned off its tracker right after Kirk was killed. Both the pilot and the FAA have been interviewed, and he attributes the lost signal to the rural nature of the Utah mountains.
I see we are at just over 4 minutes, 14 seconds in terms of view duration. That was the average length of time you folks watched my last video, so I just want to say goodbye to many of you who tend to watch for 4 minutes. That barely gets you past the intro. But for the rest of you, I want to welcome those who have subscribed. Also, thank you very much to Beth Moore for your contribution. Much appreciated. If you are finding this analysis worthwhile, important, meaningful, please do hit the thanks button and let's get started. I can guarantee you, just as one new theory crashes and burns, another 5 are going to pop up in its place. Now, according to the New York Post, the conservative influencer jerked back and appeared to recoil in pain and grab at his neck as the crack of a single gunshot rang out from the crowd. Remember, he didn't die instantly. Now, we know there's footage of people taking Charlie Kirk from the scene and rushing him to hospital. Why would you do that if he's obviously deceased? And he would be obviously deceased from a head wound. And let's also put this excerpt from the affidavit on screen. Let me also ask all those people who put their hands up, how many of you actually read the affidavit from beginning to end? If your hand is up, please write that in the comments. My hand is still up. Okay, and we want to circle these letters. The bullet struck Mr. Kirk in the neck. They also say the bullet's trajectory passed close to several other individuals. Well, how can that be possible if he was shot from above? I mean, they seem to know something about the trajectory that RDB doesn't seem to know. Also, Kirk was rushed to a nearby hospital where he was declared deceased. He was declared deceased at the hospital, not on scene. And I think this is a little bit different to JFK, who died on the scene in the vehicle, and that was also pretty obvious what had happened to him. Okay, and that brings us to 4 more evidence markers. If you are watching at this point, we're almost at 6.5 minutes. Well done. Your attention span does you credit. So this is really where the analysis begins. Let's start at number 1, proof of a new entry wound. RDB proves his new trajectory theory by showing what appears to be a small smudge appearing behind Charlie Kirk's head at the imputed time of impact. He also shows the head tilt to the side, which suggests it was hit from the top and the left. I want to come back to the biomechanics because we need to look at all of this within a continuum, not just one fragment and not one fragmented perspective, which is exactly what you're being provided with. RDB, to his credit, provides multiple perspectives, which adds some credibility to his argument, but does he provide enough context, enough perspective? Now, in terms of the small smudge proving where he expects the entry wound to be, RDB also claims to have caught the bullet in mid-flight. Do I need to draw pictures to show how small that projectile is and how fast it's moving vis-a-vis the image resolution of the camera? And did you know that a camera can catch a bullet in flight, but it requires specialized equipment, high-speed cameras, right? And you even see in tennis, you see high-speed cameras that still record the ball as a kind of a slight blur. Now, is the footage RDB using from a specialized camera? It doesn't look like it. Instead, it does look like footage from a cell phone camera. Can the average or even above average cell phone camera capture a tiny projectile moving 390 feet per second at worst and up to 3,900 feet per second at the most? Basically, the question is whether a cell phone camera can even capture speeds of over 1,000 miles per hour. RDB seems to think they can. Maybe he knows better because he's a gun expert, right? Yet when you look it up, it says no, a standard cell phone camera cannot capture a bullet in flight. I thought that was blindingly obvious, but I guess to one person, something is common sense, and to another, it's rocket science. By the way, I'm a photographer. I've struggled with proper camera equipment to get good photos of sprinting professional cyclists, and I'm pretty sure they're moving slower than 1,000 miles per hour. So although I don't really have a comment about the smudge RDB as identified, by above Charlie Kirk's ear at the critical moment, besides that Kirk's surgeon said the bullet didn't exit, I do think his contention that another smudge is the bullet captured in midair is fanciful, which already means we have to be cautious dealing with the rest of his theory. And by the way, the medical examiner's report is pending, and I want you to write down right now what I've been saying right now before the examiner's report comes out, and what you are saying you believe in terms of this other theory. And let's see in a couple of weeks, whenever it comes out, who is right. Although I guess some of you will say, the medical examiner's report is also part of this conspiracy. Okay. Well, I suppose you can come up with literally anything, and then anything that contradicts that you can say is a conspiracy. But you don't need to prove that part. Anyway, one additional point. Do you notice it's absolutely no problem for folks in seeing this smudge? But aren't these the same people who can't see whether the FBI shooter has a weapon under his jeans or whether he's running away with one? So you want to see something that you want to see, but if you don't want to see something, then you don't. Well, that's convenient. Anyway, number 2, supporting evidence from the FBI or law enforcement. RDB provides zero supporting evidence from a secondary source. He is the primary source, and that's good enough. The FBI and law enforcement don't acknowledge the possibility of a second shooter. They also don't have any footage of any other suspect in the area RDB highlights, neither approaching the sniper's nest or leaving it. I just want to emphasize this point. If you compare all the evidence in the abbreviated affidavit, it's 9 type pages long, to RDB's hypothesis, which would barely make 1 page, perhaps barely even half a page. Well, it's chalk and cheese. So what are we dealing with here? A lot of interrelated evidence that sort of holds hands with itself, right? Versus an idea plus some very, very little circumstantial evidence. The incredible reality is just how often the very little evidence case trumps the actual evidence. And I think part of the reason is because people want a simple explanation. And I would also take it further than that to say very simple people want a very simple explanation. And conspiracies are always dead simple. Number 3, additional footage of a second shooter from the thousands on the ground. There were a lot of people there. Now understand how when you're making the case for a conspiracy and a cover-up, if you don't throw out everything from the FBI and law enforcement, then it can't be much of a conspiracy to begin with. But you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater either. There has to be some evidence. And have a look at this image. This is just across. These are people standing kind of in a balcony with a camera just across from the imputed position where RDB seems to think that this sniper was standing. Literally, a professional sniper standing behind looks like a balcony that's transparent, a glass balcony that's transparent. And you're telling me nobody noticed him. Also that this professional doesn't want to hide away. Like the amateur guy hides away and he's sort of skulking down at ground level of the ceiling. He doesn't want to be seen, but this sniper is happy to stand there and be seen, except he's not seen. Yeah, you can clearly see the kids on the balcony opposite should easily be able to see someone setting up their sniper's nest, just as we saw the counter-snipers in the Crooks assassination. In that attempt, they saw Crooks before he could even fire off the fatal shot. So why in this case don't they see someone here? Is clearly visible. And for those standing on the balcony directly above the tent and all along it, RDB sniper would be just one little step above them, easily visible behind the transparent glass of the balcony. Does that make sense? I mean, that it doesn't make sense, because it should. And then the 4th and final point, the motivations of the content creator. Well, we can see that he preceded his trajectory video with a cover-up video. At this point, it's also worth taking a moment to look into the psychology, as I say, of the content creator. And you can do the same with me. His video before his blockbuster video was a cover-up video. So first he saw a cover-up, then he saw what was being covered up. So we can see how strong cognitive bias could have been a factor here, where RDB believed that there was some other explanation and then promptly came up with one. And I think that video probably got a lot of support, and so he just carried on with that sort of line of thinking. As I say, believing is seeing, but seeing isn't necessarily objective reality. If I can make a prediction, RDB will likely come up with a multitude of diverse theories. So you debunk one and then another one will come up. All of these will be interesting and shocking, far more so than the fairly tame suspect that's behind bars right now, and a suspect that doesn't look or sound particularly scary either. So why waste time on content that's not going to gain traction? Who cares if it's the truth or not? Let's focus on the things that are going to capture people's attention. Interestingly, is if Robinson is innocent, why didn't he say that to the judge during his arraignment? Why did he hand himself in if he was innocent? Why did his parents and family members recognize him if he was innocent? Why did someone recognize the firearm if he was innocent? By the way, plenty of suspects do loudly and vociferously insist that they are innocent. And I mean, even guilty people say they are innocent, like Michelle Trachone, as I covered her trial. More recently, Donna Adelson, Laurie Vallow, and Shad Daybell. So if Robinson is innocent, why wouldn't he just say so? I think now is a really good time for some introspection. Why are some people so highly susceptible to conspiracy theories? And who are they? And why is this happening? And instead of taking that whole thing personally, I think one's got to be curious about it. Why is this happening? And I think a point that is just easy to make and to concede is that younger men are a lot more susceptible to conspiracy theories. And I was one of them. I'm a bit older now and wiser now, but that is a fact. During times of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. But I would also say recognizing it is a very special quality. I want to tell you that we are in such times. There is universal deceit, which is why I get comments like this. Nick's coverage of this case has been awful. I don't care what Kirk's wife has to say or what anyone else has to say. There are no verifiable facts out there yet. I guess you haven't read the 9-page affidavit. There's just a lot of talking heads throwing out contradictory statements, and to believe one over the other as being the definitive narrative at this stage of the game is irresponsible and foolhardy. This was my response. Oh, so it's all the same nonsense. You know, the one set of nonsense is indistinguishable from the other. And no one set of nonsense is better than the other, in other words. Actually, there's a very big difference. One set of information is based on known facts. The others are based on very weakly assumed, unknown and likely untrue speculations. I think one's also got to look at the track record of particular creators in the situation, where you've got these popular conspiracies and then what turns out to be true. Think about the Kylie Rodney case. Think about the Koberger case. In the Kylie Rodney case, foul play. No, it wasn't foul play. In the Koberger case, he was a serial killer. No, he's not a serial killer. Anyone who can't see the difference means they have very, very poor discernment. Where have you ever seen CCTV video showing a suspect at a shooting, but the majority of people decide to ignore that and instead just imagine a shooter they can't see and for which there is no CCTV?
Are you out of your fucking mind?
Meanwhile, the hamster wheel just keeps on running and running.
We are tonight's entertainment.
The crazy part about being in a landscape of universal deceit is that reality, whatever it is, fades to the background. People, even though they are searching for it, just can't see it anymore. And you know, the incentives to make popular but fake content is why social media is the sewer, what the governor referred to as the cancer that it is today. And why it creates twisted minds like Tyler Robinson, and why we are all complicit in making that sewer when we are so reckless and careless with the truth. And then this is from the audience side, unable to recognize or reward even the truth tellers. Only wanting to be told what you want to hear from the side you support is less about facts and more about fiction. It's about being entertained. It's not knowledge. It's not reason. It's not truth. It's not the light, it's darkness.
We are tonight's entertainment.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
If you're treating this discussion as serious and sincere, you're on the right track. If it's fun entertainment and distraction and all a big joke, you're not. Because guess what? In Gotham, the joke is on you. And right now, our world is becoming Gotham. Dark, dystopian, and riddled with corruption. With this big, giant social media, bloated bull, this enormous, colossal thing that is what social media has become and that people are kind of worshipping. Are you part of that growing darkness, or are you part of the light? I'm not going to take it further than that. Thank you for listening this far. If you have, thank you very much. Almost 20 minutes. Well done. And I'll see you guys next time.
Deceit.